Okay, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I'm going to take a look at Rotten Tomatoes reviews of 2009's Knowing with Nicolas Cage. Um, I personally like this movie. I still like it after 10 years. And it's something that if I saw it playing again today, ran across it on satellite TV, I would just start watching it because I'm kind of a sucker for uh, apocalyptic stories, with some prophecy thrown in. Nicolas Cage playing an alcoholic dad. For me, it works. The suspense works. There isn't anything in it CGI wise that throws me out of it. Again, I'm looking at this from when I saw it in 2009. I'm not trying to compare the CGI to Avengers Infinity War. So we're going to read Rotten Reviews and we're going to find out how well it seems to have aged after 10 years. Now, I don't know if this movie made money. My guess is that it did make a profit. Um, However meager that profit was. A lot of Nick Cage movies, by the way, do, as badly as he's panned. In this case, we have a tomato meter at 33% and an audience score at 42%. I'll have to say right off the bat that I don't agree with that. I would give this movie like 2.5 stars. To me, that would put it closer to 50%, 55%. That's my own personal opinion. But we'll move into the actual Rotten Reviews and see what I can disagree with. We have the top one from 2 days ago, 3.5 stars. Knowing has a lot of suspense, eerie tones that makes the experience goosebump worthy. It certainly benefits with Nicolas Cage delivering a solid performance too, one of my favorite actors of all time growing up as a kid. However, the film does start to sort of lag after the midpoint, but yeah, Knowing is good. For those of you Netflix users who never watched it, I'd recommend you should. I largely agree with this. I don't agree that it's 3.5 stars. Um, let's not be that generous. I think that if you see this on Netflix, if it is still on Netflix, it's worth checking out if you haven't seen it before. My only real problem with the plot, I'm forgiving a lot, but my major sticking point with this, I mean, if you want to ask me what I think ruins this in a logic sort of way, I would say that the aliens needing to pick up Nicolas Cage's kids as, the Adam and Eve of starting a new race of humans elsewhere on another planet. I would say that that falls apart because why did the aliens wait to grab these kids until, literally the earth was burning? If these aliens knew in a prophecy sort of way or from their science that the earth was doomed and it was doomed on this particular date, why did they wait until the last minute to pick up the kids? Why not just pick up the kids? If these kids were indeed that special, why not just grab them years before? I mean, why wait till the last minute? And of course, the answer is the plot demands that they wait until the last minute. That's the factor of suspense. It's needed for the story. Logically, it's total garbage. But aside from that, there's not one deal breaker in here. I mean, yeah, you can nitpick and say Nicolas Cage is a scientist. I guess he's an astrophysicist portrayed as one in this. Yet he's completely easily derailed into prophecy and conspiracy theory very easily in this story for somebody who's a scientist. That's a small nitpick of mine, but not a deal killer. That goes along with his character being an alcoholic. But yeah, that's the one logic point that bothers me. I think this is worthy of a view on, say, a streaming service when you've got time. It does leave you with an uneasy feeling at the end. It's definitely not a feel-good movie. It tries to say it's got a happy ending where, yes, the Earth is destroyed, but the two kids live on somewhere else as a version of Adam and Eve. Yeah, that could be a positive point, but it still leaves you feeling kind of depressed, showing the earth being scorched by the sun. Um, so it's not a feel-good movie. Don't watch this if you're, looking to go to work the next day feeling great. You'll probably go in feeling a little uneasy. Maybe you'll need an extra cup of coffee, assuming you didn't fall asleep during this movie. For me, I didn't fall asleep. This had, some Bible prophecy thrown in with aliens and the supernatural, and it had enough tension to keep it going for me. The tension ride was enough for me to follow from beginning to end. No falling asleep here, despite, bagging on this is another bad Nicolas Cage movie. 3.5 stars. The Knowing has a strong first two acts. It actually leaves you not knowing what lies ahead in the film. Then the plot starts to become a bit overzealous and convoluted, so nonetheless, the third act is somewhat of a letdown. It leaves you wanting more, and I think that's where the movie really falters. There are things to like about the movie, though. Nick Cage gives a somewhat, dare I say, normal performance, and it's actually refreshing from him, that coupled with the premise of the movie. Okay, they're saying that they've seen too many Nicolas Cage movies where he plays some over the top wacky character. I agree. He doesn't play this in this film. He comes across as a completely normal person, a normal person that's got, issues, but a normal person nonetheless. 3 stars. This movie is worth seeing if you really want to catch some great pictures of burning plane or catastrophe in the subway, or you aren't so very critic and you are able to consume this kind of film. Not so bad, but could have been much better if scenario had been a little more clear and reasonable. That woman, she's absolutely crazy. John, not much better. And these children, they are not particular. What have they done to make new life on another planet? Okay, he's saying, logical nitpicks with it. Why did the aliens find this guy's kid so special that they needed to become Adam and Eve somewhere else? It doesn't say that. That's not the main point of the movie. The main point of this movie is the tension in figuring out this prophecy. When you do find out what it's all about at the end, you can go back and ask why this, why that, but that wasn't the main driver of the movie. The main driver of the movie was a guy discovers a crazy prophecy, and he wants to know what this means and how he can somehow get out of it. And that's the driver of the story. It is a biblical reference. The whole thing is a biblical allegory to Adam and Eve. But again, that's not the driving force throughout it, even though that's what it ends up as the result. 5 stars. I enjoyed the storyline, the idea behind the movie, and the CGI. I agree, not the 5 stars. I particularly enjoy this type of thing. I enjoy the mystery. I enjoy the prophecy. I enjoy the tension of a regular person uncovering all of this and, trying to figure out how to survive it. I don't enjoy the Bible prophecy ending, but it had to go somewhere, and it had to go somewhere that wasn't good, so it could have been worse. 1 star. Sometimes it's hard to understand why you can't really stand a movie, yet keep watching it thinking it will get better because you don't really have a good reason not to like it. From the scientist who isn't very scientific to the school property the dad ends up damaging by mistake, though it never should have been taken home, I found it difficult to relate to any of the characters. Maybe because it is Christian themed at times, but even with that the case with myself not being very religious. Okay, so this person is saying that, again, nitpicking, it's a scientist who is easily derailed into things that aren't scientific. Okay, that's a nitpick. Again, they're making a good point, though, right off the bat, that they're saying they kept watching it and they're not really sure why. Well, again, that's because the movie has enough tension to interest you and to keep you involved, and that's all a good story really needs. Story-wise, it was good. It's just that, when you put logic to it, it's not good. But story-wise, does it suck you in? Does it keep you wanting to find out where this goes, despite the flaws? Yes, it does. 5 stars. Not sure why the ratings are so low. This movie is unbelievable and amazing and has some biblical parallels to it. Disagree on the 5 stars. 3 stars. Another unintentionally funny Cage film. No, it's not. That's somebody that just bags on Nick Cage films. A lot of his films are unintentionally funny, and he comes across that way, and you don't know if he meant it that way. In this case, no, it's not like that at all. You can take this as a straight-up serious film, despite Nick Cage's name being in it. 1 star. This movie may mean something to certain people. For others, it just sucks. Boring characters with boring storyline. I think they're alluding to the parallels with biblical Adam and Eve story. I didn't even get that until it was well into the third act, so I don't agree. 3 stars. Whoa, Knowing was not what I was expecting when I picked it out from On Demand, and I mean that it turned out to be pretty okay. I won't give much of a synopsis to avoid any spoilers, but Knowing is one of the better films in the doomsday prophecy genre. Cage plays an astrophysicist whose son, at a time capsule opening, picks up a strange sequence of numbers from 50 years ago. Cage, being an inquisitive scientist and yes, totally hammered as a single dad, discovers in a settling, again, they're kind of giving a synopsis. It is a prophecy that a scientist has uncovered, bordering on conspiracy. It plays fast and loose with, how a scientist would actually approach this, but it does present a colleague of Cage's to play this role, trying to talk him down, trying to talk sense into him. So again, I don't find that the major flaw in the film. I find the major flaw being the reasoning of why the aliens did what they did. Half a star, sloppily filmed, poorly acted, and illogically plotted. The choice of Nicolas Cage as the main antagonist alone makes this movie bad. I disagree. I think like Nicolas Cage was fine. I think maybe he actually made it more interesting because since he has the reputation of you're wondering if he's gonna, do something really over the top and hammy, you're kind of left as in a state of suspense as to if you should just watch to see what he does. And I think that works for the movie. It kind of works along with the prophecy where you're kind of wondering where this crazy prophecy thing is going to go. And at the same time, you're wondering, what is Nicolas Cage going to do? Is he going to do something zany? I think it works together like that. But, as a spoiler, Nicolas Cage doesn't do anything particularly like his other roles. He plays this one pretty straight. 4.5 stars. It was quite enjoyable and thought-provoking. The last scene was nice. A welcome change from the garbage that Hollywood puts out these days. Well, I'll agree in one regard, it's kind of a unique story, a unique movie. There aren't a lot of other movies that tried to do the same thing. In fact, I haven't found one that tries exactly to do this. Yes, it has parallels to other things besides just the Adam and Eve story. It has parallels to some other sci-fi, but it's got a unique concoction of events going on with the suspense, and it keeps up the suspense that it's worth watching. It's not like just something you've seen before. Probably, I would say 99% chance you have not seen this somewhere before. 3.5 stars. This movie was not what I expected, but much more. Cage and Byrne are great, although I have a hard time seeing Cage as an MIT professor. Maybe I've seen too many of his movies. We'll agree there. This is science fiction for those who don't generally like sci-fi. The movie begins with a question about life. Is it determined or random? The movie answers the question in a way that works for the movie. For real life, no. A very engaging film. This review touched upon something. At the very beginning of the movie, Cage, in a lecture to his students, poses a question. The movie kind of attempts to answer that question. So thematically, this movie is not a problem. I mean, it works. There are other critiques, right? But thematically, the movie works. There's not a problem there. 5 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed the movie. 5 stars. Cage does take on some odd movies at times, but I love this one and never get why all the hate. Again, if there is hate out there for this, I don't see it a lot. This movie isn't referenced a lot in regards to other things. People have largely forgotten about it. I don't even see it on cable or satellite, very often. So there's a high chance that you haven't seen it, and if you haven't, check it out once because you might actually enjoy it. 4.5 stars. How ironic that I didn't know about this film until I watched it just now. It seems more pertinent than when it was made, since the threat of global warming has increased tremendously under the Trump administration. Okay, they're bringing politics into it. There's no global warming angle to this at all. There's a doom angle to this. There's nothing global warming about it. And there's nothing political about this. Guaranteed, if you watch this, you're not going to get politics unless you're really trying to find it. 3 stars. There was a time when Nicolas Cage wasn't a laughingstock, and the time was before Knowing released. Knowing is a strange film to review. On the one hand, it contains some genuinely creepy scenes, including a plane crash that is convincing and a scene in the woods that is eerie, but the story about a professor who goes out to prevent catastrophes based on a list contained in an unearthed time capsule falls flat. This is probably the film when Nicolas Cage started going nuts. No, if there was a time when Nicolas Cage went nuts, it was far before this film. He's always been a little bit like that. This is the least of his nutty films, really. Don't let Nicolas Cage's name put you off from this film. 3 stars. Knowing is a strange. Okay, I read that. 3 stars. There was a time when Nicolas Cage wasn't a laughing stock. Okay, this person's kind of just repeating the same review. Maybe he didn't know it posted. That happens. 3 stars, a middling kind of film. Knowing is okay. Again, it's like we're getting the same review from different people. Let's move on. Maybe I'm not being fair, but it looked like the same review from multiple people. 5 stars, chilling, haunting, optimistic, good sci-fi without the usual Hollywood trope of aliens coming to eat us. There are benevolent, highly evolved life forms in the universe, folks. Okay, again, there's an alien aspect to this. The aliens aren't the good guys or the bad guys. They're kind of like a dispassionate curator of life, so to speak. On one hand, they sympathize with us a tiny bit, but on the other hand, they've got a job to do, and they're not going to get over emotional about us being wiped out. That's just the way it goes. It's that kind of an alien. 3 stars, a middling kind of film. Knowing is a strange film to review. Okay, again. Wow, wow, wow. It's like they're repeating under different names. Now I'm wondering, all these different names and repeating, is this going to turn into a video about Rotten Tomatoes conspiracy? We're looking at reviews from 2018, so I'm wondering why. What would the motive be to post the same review under like a dozen or 2 dozen different names? July 15th, 2008. This is long after the movie had a marketing of anything. We're talking about a movie that was in the theaters in 2009. Wow, I don't understand what's going on with that. You would be like 9 years too late to try to put the hype up about this unless somehow it's being resold somewhere on DVD or in a collection. Very strange. 5 stars. If you were a religious person, you'd probably say it's hogwash, but it's great. Okay. Again, another review, a copied review by a different name. Very strange. Again, we're still in 2018. I don't understand the fake reviews. 4 stars. Quite a suspenseful movie. I waited almost to the end before the MIT professor and his family are extinguished by the solar flare. I was called away. Nicolas Cage carries this film with very good acting. I would say, yeah, Nicolas Cage was cast in the right role. He doesn't like ham it up and do something crazy and zany. He's completely believable. 2 stars. From the composer to the cameraman to the CGI animators to the actors, I am astonished that so many people could come together to make so bad a movie. There was one interesting premise and one truly awesome scene. The rest was a mess of half-baked religious and scientific stuff through which one must sit in order to arrive at an ending so gloomy it will take a half-day binge of Family Guy to cleanse the mind. While I agree it's not a feel-good movie, I also disagree with what he's saying. It seems like he's judging this after he saw the whole movie. He's going back and judging it, that it rubbed him wrong because he doesn't like the religious allegory or Bible allegory. That's not fair. As a movie, it's fine. You don't get that Bible allegory sense, watching this movie while you're watching it. It's not until after the conclusion that you can go back and make the comparisons. So that's not fair. 4 stars. A much better sci-fi movie than the critics would lead you. Again, it's opening with a different, it's got some different text, but it's got the first line here, a much better sci-fi movie than the critics would lead you to believe. No, I don't trust this review either. I don't get the fake reviews. I don't get it. 5 stars. This is a wildly great original movie. Critics always seem not to like movies that have a faith-based story. Yes, it's absurd, but just enjoy it. Nicolas Cage is actually good. Great use of Beethoven the Seventh. Yeah, I'll agree. Nicolas Cage is actually well suited for this role. And it may be that a lot of the critics don't like, the professional critics don't like the religious allegory any more than a lot of the audience members do. It just rubs them the wrong way. 3 stars. Knowing 2009 was a pretty comfy movie I caught on Sci-Fi yesterday. It's a wild ride that was fun knowing nothing about going in. It has an interesting premise, decent spook factor, a typical Nicolas Cage performance, and some unexpected Christian undertones. Worth watching, C+. I'll largely agree, but I wouldn't say it's a typical Nicolas Cage performance, because when you say typical on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a reputation that goes along with that typical, and it's not that at all. C plus, I kind of agree, 2.5 stars. But then again, he gives it 3 stars. He might be a little high considering his own review. Knowing nothing about this, not expecting anything, it's entertaining. It has the tension to suck you in and keep you going, just to find out where it's going to go. 0.5 star, one big pile of dog poop. Nick Cage is ridiculous and over-dramatized everything. It's like watching The Rock, but worse. No, I disagree, and The Rock isn't that bad either. Maybe I should go back and do some reviews on that. No, The Rock is a better movie. Nicolas Cage works in The Rock just fine, and he works in this just fine. 4 stars, filled with suspense, great special effects, and emotional impact. Yeah, it had all that, but not enough for 4 stars. 4.5 stars. This film ended up being so much more than what I expected from the trailer. It had me intrigued all the way until the last second of the film. In my opinion, it was quite an original, unpredictable plot and very mind-opening as well. I highly recommend giving this a watch. I'll largely agree with that, but not giving it 4.5 stars. Let's not get out of line. 4 stars. Visually engaging horror sci-fi tale. The beauty of knowing is the not knowing what happens. Yeah, you won't know what happens other than you read this review and others. Going into this fresh, you don't know what's going to happen. You're kind of wondering how he's going to get out of it, even though you get closer and closer to the end, you realize there ain't no way out of it, right? But it keeps you watching. 0.5 star. Too many concepts put into one movie, also extremely illogical and overdramatic. I honestly have nothing good to say about this movie. Well, that's too bad because I disagree. 4 stars. This is a solid science fiction movie akin to Midnight Special, but jam-packed full of action. I couldn't believe how this fast-paced movie propelled toward the satisfying ending. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I wouldn't say the ending was 100% satisfying. It was kind of depressing, but again, I can't nitpick that too much because I don't see another way out of it. They kind of drove it to that conclusion. By the end, there wasn't another way out. 4 stars. The accident scenes are intense. Yeah, I'll say the accident, the plane crash scene, that was good. Don't think you're going to get CGI from, a new Avengers movie. For what it was, yeah, it was just fine. It was, it kept you involved. The plane crash scene did give you the sense that you were there, and you kind of wondered if you were sitting in traffic on the highway and the plane crashed right there. It felt like, yeah, that could be you there. What would you do? 0.5 star. You'll spend the first 3/4 of the movie thinking, please, not the stupid, obvious ending. Please, not the stupid, obvious ending. Not to give anything away, but you'll like this movie more if you turn it off 3/4 of the way through. Again, the ending kind of rubs people wrong. It's depressing, and it brings in the religious allegory. Or, I shouldn't say it brings it in. It makes it more obvious. The religious allegory isn't obvious until the end, and that really, it sticks with people the wrong way. 0.5 star. Scientology propaganda, horrible. Wrong. There's nothing about Scientology in this other than the fact that, yeah, Scientology also talks about aliens. Again, if that's your criteria, then, Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters, that's about Scientology too. No, I disagree. 3.5 stars. Spoiler alerts. I think this movie is underrated. A lot of people enjoy this type of movie with the mystery behind it. I saw that some people say it had an absurd plot, and I bet if in the ending the kids wound up on an alien world without the religious overtones, that word would not be used. In any facet of science and life in general, there are anomalies, and those are always fun to explore. I agree with this. It's that ending and the religious angle to it rubs people the wrong way. it had had a different ending that didn't put it so on the nose and reveal that it was an allegory to Adam and Eve, then yeah, I think the reviews would suddenly not have a problem with all of that. Again, it's just the religious angle really off-puts people. You know, they just can't open their minds. 3 stars. Damn it, I was expecting a crappy Nick Cage movie, and instead I got a decent Nick Cage movie. The benefit of going in with low expectations. I agree 100%. You're surprised that, you know, you liked it, even though it had Nick Cage. Again, you know, he's not the big bad, really. 3 stars. Knowing starts out with an astounding premise that ultimately falls apart due to the plot's fantastic and absurd final half hour and senseless twist ending. Again, I'm going to call this one largely because I've made my point. A lot of people like this movie. It's aged rather well. It's still worth a watch. Nick Cage has even more of a crazy reputation since movies he's made after this were even worse. It's not because of him that this movie is low. It is because the religious ending, the allegory to the Bible's Adam and Eve story, really puts people off. If you take that out, this easily could have been 3 stars or above in Rotten Tomatoes, and that's my final word on it. I will see you all again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.